Hey guys, it's Zero. I don't want to waste too much time. Description of what I'm reading is in the sidebar, so we'll go ahead and check it out. Pen hit the paper. The scratch of scribbled words curled into his ears. My name is Cheshire, but I don't have to say that. You know everything about me, Doc. What do you want me to write why I'm here again? Because the first time didn't work. Was I supposed to learn something? He dropped the pen, but with a little force, so it scooted across the floor and stopped on the tile. The book, it looked like a journal, lay open, perfectly lined up with the lines of the square flooring beneath him. His green eyes were fixed on the paper and what he'd written. When he looked up, a shadow crossed under the door. Another. He'd watched the movement and listened to the feet leave him behind. Fine. I'm 15, just barely, and I'm not a particularly average 15-year-old if I've landed myself in a psych ward for the second time. And I could remember the first as if it was last week. December 9th, 2001, it started with a phone call, and from there it went downhill. I'm sorry, Cheshire. Lily, she's gone. Gone, oh, that's all right. She'll call me later. Between sobs, there was nothing. The silence from my aunt was horrifying, but at my age, I wouldn't have guessed anything besides her dinner was burning. She's not coming back, dear. She's not coming back. I can remember my thoughts tracking around the idea that she simply ditched her life. Liliana had always talked about being free. I had no clue that someone else had taken her life. A much different freedom than she talked about. A week passed. I noticed Lily hadn't called me. In the second week, when no communication had sparked, I knew what was wrong. Tears flowed down my face as I realized just how far gone she was. No one bothered to tell me how or why. I knew in my heart. My heart dropped into my chest. All the while I sank to my knees. My life was worthless. While I was hanging by a thread in my own mind, the rest of my house was blissfully unaware of my suffering. How did it come to my head, the idea of joining her? It was 2 years since her death in the 7th grade, sitting on my ass in nothing but sorrow. Why was I even around? My grades were gone, and so was my life. Maybe it was a ridiculous number of years that Bible school taught me that good people go to heaven. I'm a good little boy. She was a good little girl. Water was running in my bath, and meanwhile, my mother noted her trip to the grocery store and closed the door on her way out. And that was all. No one else but me. The phone was sitting next to me. I didn't want my mum to automatically assume that today would be the last day of my life. With the bathtub full, I twisted the knob, and the water ceased to fall. Clothes and all, I stepped into the water. It was warm. It was already making me sleepy. I laid the rest of my body down underneath the water, and I closed my eyes and held my breath. It was a matter of seconds before I felt my lungs start to give way. Was this how she felt it? Was it this painful? But I knew I couldn't give up. It must have only been a minute. I felt my body twitch and pulse for air. My heart slowed. I wanted to cough anything. Opening my eyes, everything was a dizzy blur. I could feel myself losing any sort of consciousness as the second moment started. The phone rang. Now, back in the day, there wasn't such thing as caller ID, so with my parents letting me stay home alone, there was a lesson on screening calls. Let the answering machine get it, and let us listen to the message and who was on the other end before picking up. From under the water, what was left of my hearing picked up the sound of my father's voice as the outgoing message, demanding whoever was calling to leave a message for the family to get later. When the beeping sounded, it was louder than I imagined being underwater. The sound was traveling through the pipes and echoed from the answering machine downstairs. I was on the 2nd floor, but the voice that played back on the answering machine wasn't what I expected. Get up. Get up now. What the hell do you think you're doing? I said now. I'm not losing you. Get the up. On the word up, my body jolted forward and rose out of the water. I gaped for air as I took in a realization that the voice of my best friend just saved my life. He was like a brother. My mother even admitted the title to our closeness. Police are on their way. I can't believe you, Cheshire. I'd never leave you. Why would you want to leave me? Leave everyone. How could you? You foul idiot. They'll lock you up. I can only hope you learn something. Lily wouldn't want this. He exhaled as his pencil lifted from the page once more. It seemed like every word from his experience he'd written was one continuous line, as fluent and as clear as the memory itself. Is this what you wanted, Doc? Cheshire released the pencil and hung his head forward. Tears streamed down his pale white face from his eyes that put the brightest of greens to shame. Both his hands clenched, and his fingers with nails cut to nothing pushed fiercely against the skin of his palm. He pressed harder and more viciously, but he couldn't feel any sharpness that would make his tears more dignified than words on a past memory. So why am I here, Doc? Because I failed, and now I failed again. Cheshire said to the silence, and a strange knock came at the door. As he turned gently to see who was there, a nurse came in. She'd been his nurse yesterday as well. With this, he calmly closed the notebook and with the pencil stuck in the binding. The nurse came around to his front and kneeled. Her eyes had the look of shame, but Cheshire could tell she was trying to hide it, seemed robotic, like what she was doing was just routine. With pressed lips, she made a motion with her hands, often used to signal something turning or flipping over. Cheshire was sticking his arms out, when the nurse turned her head a little and reached into her lab coat pocket. From it, she reached a roll of gauze that was sterile in a sterile package and a small roll of medical tape. Cheshire's arms were straight, wrists up, and sleeves rolled. Just checking the time, sorry. There was a 3-inch wrap all the way around each wrist. They were taped tight. The nurse proceeded to remove each one, starting with the left wrist. What was underneath was gruesome. At this moment, it didn't look so bad. Multiple clean-cut lines into the lighter side of each wrist. A few of each were deeper cuts that had to be stitched closed to help bring together the sides of the skin for faster healing. It was a partial memory what happened. Cheshire only remembered the frantic rush after the razor had pulled clean across his wrist multiple times. Meanwhile, the nurse gently brushed antibacterial wash over the wounds. He flinched once or twice. She thought it was the sting of the cleaning the gashes, but in truth he couldn't feel the pain anymore. It wasn't the first time he'd purposefully injured himself. This was just the worst damage that Cheshire had done. I could think of nothing more than running for the light. I don't care how hard she pressed against my wrist, I wanted my body to bleed faster. I wanted every drop to leave my veins right now. But no. My stupid older sister, Michaela, pushed the white towel against the perfectly deep cuts I'd made. Her voice was brutal in my ear. While I tried to die, she screamed and cried for help. Please, please help. Send an ambulance. Oh God, please. My little brother's tried to kill himself. There's blood everywhere. It was quickly drowned out by the ambulance sirens and followed by a police siren. Michaela was allowed to ride with me. She watched in horror as 2 medics fought just as hard as she did to keep me alive. I felt nothing, not the needle that was stitching my wounds closed, not the disinfectant, not the hard pads of gauze binding my gashes, cutting off circulation, not my sister's tears on my leg as she begged me to stay alive. I'm gonna start a new video with part 2 and hopefully the rest of the story. Thanks and stay tuned.